Hello, welcome everyone to the Policy and Projects Committee of the Athens in Motion Commission. Glad to have y'all, and I'm going to share my screen. Okay, here is our agenda for today. And I want to, let me see, stop sharing my screen for a minute. I want to go ahead and we just welcomed a new member to our committee, Taylor, who's joining us. Taylor, can you really quick do that 30-second introduction?
Yeah, sure.
Before we went live.
Sure. I've lived in Athens for several years, and I currently work for the University of Georgia, Terry College of Business, for the Seelig Center for Economic Growth. And I bike to work every day that it's not raining, and I've been wanting to get involved and really interested in seeing what y'all do. Through Lauren, she invited me to take part, so I'm happy to be here. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Taylor. And for anyone who's watching this meeting now or in the future, we have quite a few committees on the Athens in Motion Commission. Besides policy and projects, we have education and communications, which Teresa heads, and then grants and data. So there's a lot of ways to get involved in transportation issues besides being an Athens in Motion commissioner. So if anyone watching this or watching this in the future reaches out if they have an interest in being involved, because it's a lot of work, and it takes a community to get these things done. So we'd love to have you. All right. My internet might be going out. There it goes. The person who was minutes time was me, and I have not recorded minutes. So the first thing I would like to do is take a volunteer who will actually do the minutes, because I'm having a bit of a time keeping up with our agenda and also doing minutes on the committee. So I'm sorry about that. Can I get a volunteer?
Is she breaking up for other people too? Okay. Sorry, Lauren, your audio is kind of cutting in and out a little bit. Did you want to do get the agenda, a motion for approval of the agenda? Is that what you said?
She's looking for somebody to do the minutes.
I would.
Okay.
I can do the minutes.
Thank you, Aaron. Wonderful.
One thing you could try, Lauren, is under audio. If you switch audio, you can have them call your phone, and the phone has a little bit better connection than the internet.
So I use my internet for my phone service.
Maybe it won't work. Maybe it will. I'm not sure.
Can y'all hear me?
In the meantime, yes. Okay, I can. It might be my internet too.
Lauren and Daniel, you both are kind of fading in and out.
I'm going to try something. Okay. All right. How's my audio now?
Good.
Okay. Hopefully it stays that way. I think you have a better connection, so it's probably just me, or a combination of the two.
I think it's, yeah, my internet's not great.
Okay, but that's better, Lauren.
Okay.
Yeah.
Darn it. Okay. All right, I'm going to try and take a vote for the agenda now.
Are we in favor of it? Yes, we are.
Can I get a second?
Second.
I'll second that.
All right. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. All right. The agenda carries. So first item on the agenda, I just wanted to see if there was any updates on our complete streets policy rewrite. Daniel?
I have not heard any updates, but I think since that last one that we talked about at the last meeting, I haven't gotten any. Most likely with all the T-spots and everything going on, we probably won't have an update until like August. Just because we're focusing on, for the rest of July, we're going to be doing T-spot applications. And then we've also got the kind of projects that we're helping all of the user groups with. So I think
That makes sense.
probably, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, I just thought I would check in on that. And Taylor, what we had done is we have a new version of the Complete Streets policy that was passed 2011, 2012. So we've spent the past year or so crafting a new one. And so that will be our big policy item since we've been a commission.
Thanks. I'll read the old one.
Yeah, we can get you the final version of the new one.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we went through it line by line many times. Good times, good times.
If you'd like to just recite it, you can do that.
I want someone to produce a theatrical version of the Complete Streets policy. Wouldn't that be great? Town and gown, you guys.
I think Elliot gets the prize.
Lots of jazz hands, I think.
All right, so our big agenda item today is to talk about the upcoming T-SPLOST and the projects that we are submitting to it. When we had last talked about what we would submit, we decided that we would request a combination bucket of funds. And I'm going to come back to that. And two smaller buckets, one for ADA, remedying ADA issues with sidewalks in particular, but I guess any bike ped infrastructure, and then in a small bucket of funds for neighborhoods to use because they're kind of left out of the Athens Motion Plan, which prioritizes leveraging existing networks and corridors and streets and whatnot. So I want to come back to this big bucket. Taylor, are you familiar with T-SPLOST 2018 and the projects that are in there?
I'm not.
Okay. I just don't want to tell you something you don't already know. So in T-SPLOST, there were two buckets of fund from which this the Athens Motion Commission draws funds from. One was a bike bucket, it was $6 million, and one was a ped bucket, so a separate bucket for pedestrian projects, $11 million. And there's some other stuff in the T-SPLOST 2018 that kind of come under our purview, but that's another story. So what we've come across is in trying to follow what the referendum said for T-SPLOST, when we're looking at areas that have been prioritized for pedestrian infrastructure, we've kind of shut ourselves in a corner a bit because sometimes we're looking at an area and for sidewalk improvements, and then the mayor and commission come back and they say we want a multi-use path, which could be bike and pedestrian. So then we're drawing from both buckets, and it just creates some administration complications. So what we were thinking is that we would ask for a single bucket of funds that would be both bike and pedestrian, micromobility, everything. We're not just talking about bikes anymore. And that would give us and the Mayor Commission staff the most flexibility. So that's what we're thinking about doing. Now, the downside of that in asking for a single big bucket of money is the Citizens Advisory Committee for the next T-Splost, they're going to want a sense that they can shop around and select their project list. And when there's projects that take a lot of money, then I think that they turn a more critical eye to that, and there isn't the sense that they have room for these other projects that they care about, if I'm making any sense there. So I've been trying to fill out the form for this big bike pedestrian bucket and going through it, and I've been looking at, and Elliot and Aaron are very familiar with this, like the last submissions for the pedestrian improvements program, the bike improvements program, and then marrying that with the Athens in Motion plan, which didn't exist, wasn't fully fleshed out at the time of T-Splost 2018, and trying to fill that out. What I've figured out is when you consider, I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot, you guys, so I just want to get this out. But when you calculate not just the bike and ped buckets from T-Splost 2018, but factor in the corridors, so Atlanta Highway, Lexington, and Brents Avenue, which were their own separate buckets, there was about $33 million for bike ped-like infrastructure. Now the corridors isn't always going to go, the corridor funding could go to roads and stuff, but I think it's like, it was about a third. Yes, a third of the total T-Splost 2018 budget. So that's what we should be aiming for at a minimum with this upcoming T-Splost. A third would be $41.7 million. And so when you see that number all together, it seems like a lot. I think it will seem like a lot to this Citizens Advisory Committee. And see, I would want to ask for more because when you add up all of our Tier 1 bike projects and all of our Tier 1 PED projects, that's $135 million for the first tier. Now, I haven't factored in projects that are already underway, and I used the high cost in the Athens in Motion plan because everything is coming out way over budget. Y'all saw what was going on with Riverbend Road. Daniel, like, have you thought any about like what we would reasonably ask for? What you think would be good? Because I'm starting to rethink the strategy of one bucket. And I have some thoughts, but I was just wondering if you had any ideas about dollars.
I haven't really thought at all about the amounts. I would say we would at least want same amount as last time, especially just as we kind of, that was a good like kind of starting place, but you know, we're gaining momentum. The process should smooth out a little bit more efficiently, and so we should be able to do more projects. And ideally, what we would do is, you know, that 5 years of projects. You know, we wouldn't want to ask for $170 million for this if it took longer than 5 years to actually build all of that. So, you know, I think if we start where we were and go from there, that makes sense. And yeah, as far as splitting it out, I think for me the big difference was it seems like with them merging everything together into multi-use paths and whatnot, it makes sense to have them already merged, but it's not that much trouble to split it between the two projects. I think my main thought was if we have two different buckets of pedestrian funds, one of them might get cut. So if we have Athens in Motion sidewalks over here, and then we're also applying for, like residential sidewalks, or the small sidewalk program, then that could kind of, I don't want those things to necessarily compete against each other. I did also just get off the phone with Commissioner Thornton earlier, and she's been getting a lot of calls from her constituents, and they're interested in putting together some proposals to get sidewalks in neighborhoods. So we're going to be helping people put together applications, but that's another thing to think about is specific locations will be probably applied for by residents, and whereas ours are more programmatic, and we can say we want, like, in my mind, we would get the bucket of money to be able to use on those specific sidewalk locations, instead of a community having to go together to put together a T-SPLOST application for their actual sidewalks. We could essentially build the program in a way so that they would be able to use that funds. That being said, like you said, I think the user group, if they're choosing between a bucket of money or an actual project, they might lean towards the project or they might lean towards the bucket. I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
I'm curious, what's your thought about splitting them back out?
Yeah, what happened last time is the thought of the Citizens Advisory Committee was that while they really wanted to give extra weight to projects, to sidewalks submitted by neighborhood groups, such as there was a group of citizens, of residents who submitted a sidewalk along Grand Ellen, and then there was Vincent Drive. I think we tried to keep, the Citizens Advisory Group tried to keep Vincent Drive on there, but the committee had the sense that the bucket of funds would cover neighborhood projects. Elliot, Aaron, is my recollection right there?
I guess I don't necessarily remember that. I remember more being like, well, we didn't want, while we wanted to give definitely weight to individual or non-county submitted, I should say citizen submitted projects, felt like we just knew that we didn't have enough to go around for Grand Ellen and Vincent. I don't ever remember it necessarily. I don't specifically remember it being like, oh yeah, we'll use that they'll use those funds out of the bucket to pay for that. I just felt like it was like, well, we just don't have enough to go around, and we have to make this money count elsewhere. But I could be wrong on that. It's been a while.
Didn't Vincent get funded in 2020 SPLOST?
Yes. So it came up for 2020 SPLOST and they funded it there.
Was it proposed in the 2018 and it didn't make it through that round? Is that okay?
It it got review, but it didn't make it on the final list. I think that we put it on the final list, but then the mayor and commission at the time X'd it, because I think they were the ones who felt like the bike ped bucket would cover that.
Okay.
Got it.
Yeah, so it will be interesting to see how this Citizens Advisory Committee interprets those, or sees these individual neighborhood projects versus like the buckets of funds. So to answer your question, Daniel, what I thought about doing is going ahead and breaking out, even though this is more work for us, and I'm sorry, breaking out the double tier 1 projects for the corridors in particular. So having a separate project for double tier 1 Atlanta Highway / West Broad, because it's pretty expensive. and then double tier 1 for Lexington Highway. So having those be 2 additional projects that would have buckets of funding. And then we could come forth if the committee says, hey, we'll look at an alternate, we'll say, okay, well, we'll offer this much, but we might not be able to do both bike and pedestrian facilities. So let them decide, but then also have that general bucket of bike and pedestrian projects. That was just one idea I had today.
Sorry, you said Lexington and Atlanta Highway?
Yeah, so 2 additional buckets. So, or no, it's not really a bucket. So Atlanta Highway, West Broad, here's a pot of money because there's double tier 1s there, and then Lexington, here's a pot of money.
Were you wanting to do that for Prince Avenue as well?
I wanted to ask y'all about that, if that made sense to do that, because it's not double tier 1, but it does have that. It is a corridor.
Now, how is that different from the
In the
previous one?
meeting-
Weren't there separate? There's a separate Lexington 5 million, a separate Atlanta Highway 5 million, right? And how does that differ from what we are talking about for the next T-Splost?
These buckets would be specific in that they would be bike and pedestrian, and they would be for the tier 1 projects that are in the plan.
Okay.
Where right now it's very general.
Do
Yeah.
we have a list of the double tier 1 projects? Because it's really kind of impossible going back and forth between, you know, those spreadsheets in the book and trying to figure out where the double tier 1s are.
Yeah, I can't remember if we've drafted it in an email, but Atlanta Highway from Mitchell Bridge to the river is double tier 1, and then from the river to Alps or further is another set of double tier 1s.
So basically from
For bike and ped?
from around where the mall is to Alps Road or Hawthorne.
Not quite where the mall is. I think it starts at Mitchell Bridge Road is where the tier 1.
That's Mitchell Bridge to Hawthorne. Right.
Yeah. But there's a name. Sorry, Teresa, go ahead.
I would love for us to be supportive of that. That's an important project. And do we have any idea like what the funding level for that one and the similar project for Lexington Highway would be? I mean, how do we know how much money to ask for?
There's an estimate in the plan, and particularly for Atlanta Highway, it's really expensive. It's some of our most expensive projects. So if you pull up the plan and go to, it's the last tier 1 project. Actually, let me just share my screen. How about that? I will share my screen. That would be useful. All right, y'all can see this. All right. So this is these are your bike projects. And the reason why it's so expensive is it's a separate facility. The first number is low side, the second number is high side. We need to lean towards the high side.
The high side is too low, basically.
Probably. Yeah. And this is just the bike facility. And now I'm going to scroll up and we'll get to the pedestrian ones. And there's tier 3, there's tier 2. And I think that's way too low.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah,
I know Prince Avenue is the Prince Avenue user group is going to be putting forth a proposal that is essentially an extension of their current project. So right now they have $4 million, I think, for Prince Avenue. They've gone through, they've compiled all the projects together. We're about to go to the public, get feedback from the public. From there, we'll come up with a kind of a prioritization list of Prince Avenue projects. And then by then, the TSWAS applications are already supposed to have been submitted. So what they're going to be doing is putting together an application now for the future project list. So by the time these are being reviewed, there will be an actual public input and approved project list, hopefully from Mayor and Commission. And with that project list, we would then have $4 million from the bucket of money from 18 to start building those projects out. And they want to basically add on an extra bucket for the overflow to continue working on those projects. That doesn't necessarily mean that the Tier 1 projects for bike and ped, or whatever tier they are, would be the things that get built, because they would just be, it'd be a corridor project. So, so I don't know. That's why I was kind of wondering if you're doing Tier 1 Atlanta Highway bike ped and Lexington bike ped, and you're basically saying, hey, these were like corridor projects. They've been to the public. We know that they're like highly wanted. This project is to fund those. That way you don't have to rely on the user group to sell that. Like, I understand that for Atlanta Highway and Lexington, because I haven't even heard really whether or not those user groups will be putting forth applications. I think they will. I think Lexington Highway will, but Atlanta Highway, it kind of sounds like they just, Teresa, correct me if I'm wrong, but the vote that we had was basically fund the sidewalks, and then that'll be the project. Oh, you're muted. Hold on.
Teresa, we can't hear you. Sorry, we want to hear you.
I was muted. The feedback we received from the public was really strongly in favor of doing sidewalks that connect to Atlanta Highway, not about that stretch of Atlanta Highway. I mean, it seems like that is covered by a different set of funds, if I'm understanding it correctly. If I'm misunderstanding it, then perhaps the Atlanta Highway user group needs to have another discussion.
The actual like infrastructure for Atlanta Highway isn't covered, I believe. We have the project, but the money from TSWAS 18 is going to go towards those other corridors. That's what the user group is going to recommend. It's not official because it hasn't been voted on by Mayor and Commission. I want to be clear on that. But with that, it makes sense that we would go ahead and do this, and then maybe geographically, if you actually want these on Atlanta Highway, you would want to make sure that the wording is kind of indicative of that this is for the corridor, not for adjacent roadways.
Right. So I think the user group is going to say, you know, we've got support for doing these adjacent roadways. So I think that for Athens in Motion, then we need to make sure that we're asking for money to complete that sidewalk on Atlanta Highway, rather than, you know, doing other things with the money.
I mean, to me, it seems like I would almost see those as separate from our Tier 1 bike and ped. It could be the same, I guess.
Talking about Atlanta Highway?
I like that those are corridor. Yeah, I like that those are corridor projects, because I think that is a big selling point that they've gone through the whole process. So, I mean, we could still split out pedestrian from bicycles and have its own Athens in Motion plan bucket, or would the next round just be we're going to do these two corridors, and that would be the only money that you're requesting as far as the Athens in Motion plan goes?
No, I absolutely want to have that general fund. I don't mean to say general fund. That bucket for other tier one stuff, because we have so much to do. Like Vine Street is a double tier one for bike ped facilities. Oak Street, like Old Hull Road. There's so much. The list, it's just massive.
Mm-hmm.
But I do worry, like,
okay.
I worry, go ahead.
No, so go ahead.
I worry about the general nature of a bucket of bike and ped funds. Like we need that will give us the most flexibility. It will ensure that groups that don't have the resources or the time or the contact with the commissioner also get bike and pedestrian infrastructure versus just the neighborhoods who have the time or have the backing of a commissioner. So I'm a little worried that this process might put more weight in public input and public, I guess, power and connections, and leave out some neighborhoods that critically need this infrastructure. So I don't know.
Yeah.
At the
Well, I think I have some other projects here that so I talked to Stephen, and our list was the bike tier 1, pedestrian tier 1, ADA compliance funds, residential sidewalk program. All of those were going to be through Athens in Motion Commission, because we felt like those would be more meaningful coming from you guys rather than from TPW. The projects that I'm going to be putting forth from TPW is more built around Vision Zero. So that's going to be the safety corridors, roadway safety audits, and safe routes to schools. With the safe routes to schools and safe routes to parks, what that would be there's often a lot of grant opportunities that need matching funds, and so we would basically say we just want whatever, like a $5 million bucket that we could start applying through using the safe routes to schools kind of program agenda, where they do all the analysis and stuff, and we can work with safe routes to schools to kind of work on those projects. And so, like, worst case scenario, we would just use the money to improve access to some of the schools in Athens. Best case scenario, we could get some grants using that as matching funds, and then turn around and kind of leverage it to get more access to more schools. And the same thing for parks. Although I'm going to talk with Leisure Services to see if that would be like a joint proposal between us. Because while it is safe routes to parks, which is a park thing, it's still sidewalks within right of way that is outside the jurisdiction of Leisure Services. So they would be excited about having better access, but this is where we could start identifying some of those sidewalk gaps. And so an example would be from Ben Burton up to that sidewalk at the next little road there. It's like 600 feet or something, and without it, there's no access into the park for any of those neighborhoods. So,
not to be nitpicky, but that it's technically a multi-use path, and it should be referred to as such.
Is it along Mitchell Bridge Road? Is that considered a multi-use path?
It's multi by Athens standards. It's and state standards. It's multi-use path width, and that's the whole reason. One of the big reasons that Tyler and Bike Athens is Tallahassee like Greenway. One of the reasons it got scored high marks because it actually connects to another piece of multi-use path. It's not signed as such, but it's width-wise, it is wide enough. I believe.
Yeah, I mean, when I was working on the Greenway Network plan, that was definitely something that I was like, it's the minimum of what we would want. Ideally, it'd be a little wider, but there's no reason to go in and rip it out and replace it with something when there's so many other gaps. And so just connecting to it and maintaining that width would be ideal.
It needs maintenance and signage, and it becomes much more usable. So that's the main thing.
Yeah. And I think once the Tallahassee Road trail or path is on the other end of that, we can start justifying that kind of looping it into leisure services. So, but yeah. So, I mean, between all of those, so yeah. Just to go back, Vision Zero would be the safety corridors, roadway safety audit, safe routes to schools, safe routes to parks. And I'm going to be writing those this month after Monday, which is when the RAISE grant's due. So I'm kind of stacking up millions of dollars back to back. There's a lot of different intersections that we're putting forth as a department, and then there's also some facilities for transportation public works in terms of like staffing, locations. Traffic engineering overhaul, that kind of stuff. And then I think there is some sign projects and signal projects, and there's some bridge projects. We're actually going to be putting in the North Avenue bridge that is actually looped into the grant project. We're going to go ahead just in case and see if we can get a T-SPLOS project for that, so that worst case scenario, if we get the North Avenue Bridge within T-SPLOS and we don't get the RAISE grant, then we can still start moving forward with bridge replacement. If we end up getting both, it will just offset the cost, because we're kind of concerned about the cost right now of the RAISE grant, and with the prices rising. So we would actually be able to do the bridge and do kind of everything plus some extra flourishes on that North Avenue multi-use path. But obviously, and then we got paving and some live stream height replacements, I think. So there's a lot of different proposals we're bringing forth, and I think with us. So, but bring it back to the Athens in Motion Commission. If we do the bike and ped in one, that's one proposal. ADA compliance, residential sidewalk program, Tier 1 Atlanta Highway, Tier 1 Lexington Highway. That's 5. And in terms of like amounts for like each of those, we could do some round numbers. We could try to calculate some things. I think like the ADA compliance funds, we might be able to. I think we're waiting on some data from Georgia Power that will say which poles are kind of in the sidewalks and which ones aren't, I believe. And if that's the case, then we would have the data we need to know how much, on average, how much a pole replacement would be, and then we could get a number from there. I'm sure it would be astronomical, but I don't know. Short of just saying like 5 million here, 10 million there, I don't really know.
Daniel, I have
we'll
a
need
question.
to come up with a way to figure that out.
I have a question. So the ADA compliance fund that we're talking about, would that be to remove utility poles from sidewalks? Is that what you're saying? Because there are lots of obstructed
That's one of the
sidewalks.
functions I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of places where, if you were pushing a baby stroller or attempting to push your grandmother on the sidewalk, you basically have to like go up on a bank or go into the street, and then good luck getting back on the sidewalk.
Right. Yeah, it was a call from Elliot that initially kind of prompted that, because there was kind of a spot on North Chase Street, I believe, that where there's these poles, and so there's a wheelchair riding down the roadway, because he had to go around an entire block.
They're all over town. You know, I see
Mhm.
them
So-
wherever I go, and it just makes my blood boil. I'm going to start taking pictures.
Yeah, and we'll need pictures for the presentation. So I don't know if we want to, like, everyone picks like one thing to focus on with how we're going to write these, or if we all want to kind of work together on them. But I think pictures for the presentation. So that's one aspect of the ADA compliance. The other one was, let's say there's a new bus stop that was built, but it's not connected to the sidewalk network. We could write in that type of access as well. And with those types of funds, if we actually we have the T-SPLOST money to put those sidewalks in, we could potentially work with transit to get the 80-20 match, where there's like federal transit grants for transit accessibility that they match 80%, and we would just have 20. So just kind of have a bucket that we could kind of extend towards these things.
Okay.
I live on Chase Street, and right across from all those telephone poles. So if you want any pictures, I can get you lots.
Perfect.
So it sounds like what we're going for here is 5 pieces of our T-SPLOST proposal. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
what do you guys think about dividing up, pulling out those corridor funds and having them be separate projects?
I would do that, because that highlights them, and it also keeps it reduces the possibility that, as you said, you know, well-connected citizen groups who, you know, have a good relationship with their commissioner could use those funds in other areas. I mean, I think we really want to make sure that those corridors are prioritized.
Yeah, and it's mainly because they're, particularly Atlanta Highway is so expensive, and it is such a high priority that and Lexington too, that I think it might be good to separate those out. Elliot, I saw you nodding over there.
You're
Yeah, I
muted.
mean, it's tough, right? It's sort of like I think the challenge, and I think, again, I think Aaron and Lauren, you probably, you know, sort of remember this from the conversations, is like a lot of times with T-SPLOST and T-SPLOST projects, right? Like within that 5 years, you want to be able to like have a sign up and point that something's been done. And I think it's like the corridor projects are the most challenging, because they're really like, honestly, they sort of have taken the place of like long range, like municipal, or I guess we're technically a county, but like county long range transportation planning on corridors that like May Courts has kind of said like that's not really our priority, right? And I think that's a hard thing to like explain to folks, that what's happening on these corridors in a lot of ways should have been happening in another context. And so because we haven't seen anything yet, folks might be more reticent, because they're like, we don't see a project that we can point to our name on it that said we spent this T-SPLOST money and this is what we got. And I think that's a big challenge. But I don't think bucketing them is a good idea. I think keeping them separate. I wonder about, yeah.
Yeah, so you think that it is a good idea to pull out Atlanta Highway and Lexington as their own projects?
Yeah, but I do think there'll be some challenges around some of that, because I think folks are going to say, we already spent money on that. We haven't seen any results yet. I think it'll be a hard sell, because we don't have anything with a name on it yet that says This new interchange is brought to you by T-Splosh 2018 or 2017, what have you, like your tax dollars at work.
Right. Okay. I see what you're saying. So the previous recognition might be useful as to the mayor and commission who are like, this is a continuation of a previous project, but more specific, but it won't be useful to the regular residents.
Or just harder to sell, I think, from a voting perspective, right? Like I think that would prickle some ears up, right? If that's the right term. Someone's like, didn't we already spend $4 million on Atlanta Highway? Like, what did we get out of it? And so those of us in the weeds will get it more, but people that aren't in the weeds on transportation planning may not really understand that. Again, I wouldn't necessarily say this in the application, but it's sort of like, we haven't, Atlanta Highway is a state corridor. We haven't done a long range plan on Atlanta Highway. This is taking the place of a lot of what, and we did have that with the Lexington and Atlanta Highway sort of like corridor planning group. But normally stuff like that happens outside of a T-Splosh project and is sort of a part of the day-to-day processes of transportation planning, particularly regional transportation planning, which we don't do a ton of.
Yeah. These are great.
We just need to capture in the presentation that, this study that was literally just done is more of a transportation study, and we're leveraging off of that. And it's not a duplication of efforts. Like, this will be used to implement that. And so when it comes time for SPLOST to do the project, they're not going to be as I like what they did with the corridor projects, and I think it was something that needed to be done. I think because it was so wide open of what types of projects, and there were so many, that it ended up being like what you're saying, is they had to do a whole planning study basically. And now is the time where we're saying, like, okay, using that, this is for implementation of this particular sub-project. It's going to be explicit enough so that there's not a lot of room to say, oh, well, this could be this or this. It's going to be, okay, here's the money, here's the project. We're going to hire a consultant to put together the engineering drawings and get going on, tying it in. And, I'm sure there will be some barriers in there with it being, I think GDOT corridors. Are those GDOT corridors, or I guess it depends on the segment, doesn't it? So.
Yeah, it's yes, it's GDOT. I think even the West Broad. Yeah, it's all GDOT. All GDOT.
Okay. So.
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there's
we
definitely going to be.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was repeating myself. So you go ahead.
I mean, maybe we put this out there now. We let the advisory group decide. Maybe they decide, like, yeah, we really want to do Atlanta Highway, but Lexington can go later. Maybe they're like, actually, we want to focus on Lexington. And I mean, we'll just keep bringing this up every T-Splost. I mean, it's a fast one. So.
I mean, Lauren, did you get the sense that these corridor projects, because there was such a small amount tied to them, like $5 million for Atlanta Highway, wasn't it? $5 million for Lexington. It felt like just an afterthought, the whole thing. Just like, well, yeah, we got this money. It's not going to go far, but it's something,
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of selling to Athens-Clarke County voters on that. And we always knew that it was going to be seed money. That's how it was presented to us, as seed money. Of course, I don't think at the time I really knew how transportation funding worked. And so I was really hoping that we get a lot of bang for our buck. But I mean, these projects are still early phase, so it's hard to know.
Mm-hmm. And it's still possible that we will. I mean, we still have a lot of those millions of dollars that could be used towards seed things. So, like, as I mentioned before with the transit grants that are 80-20, like, if we chose to only do transit improvements, if it was like $4 million that we needed to do all of the bus stops, then, what's 20% of $4 million? Like, that's all that we would really need to put forth if we got that other grant. And so it's not spent until it's spent. And so, It has been a lot longer of a process though, because there's just so much to cover, and hopefully it'll, we'll get some good stuff, and then we can pick up some steam and carry it on with this proposal. And I think that's what we really want to emphasize in the presentation is this is not a duplication of efforts. This is not going back to square one and just more planning. This is implementation to put some concrete on the ground from these things, and it's a continuation. And having it right on the heels of this other one makes it even more easy to maintain that momentum with construction.
Right. Okay. So I think we're going to do this. We're going to separate out Lexington and Atlanta Highway, and we'll see what the committee says, and the mayor and commission and voters on that. And we'll also have the bucket of funds prioritizing continuation of projects that we've committed to, also prioritizing double tier ones. So like Vine Street, there might be another one, and other tier ones in general. Yeah, before we start wrapping this up, because I know we're over time, Taylor, did you have any thoughts on this? I know this is kind of a lot to walk into for a first committee meeting.
I've just been trying to sit back and kind of absorb it. I think, I mean, I definitely have some questions, but I think those would probably be better addressed like outside of this. I think it might just take up too much time. But I'd definitely like to speak to at least one of y'all sometime, maybe over the next week.
Have you read the Athens in Motion plan?
I read a lot of it like over a year ago.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically what we're working off of. And it's a pretty good document. And so, yeah, I'd give it another read and just familiarize yourself with it. And then, we can talk about the projects that we've actually gone through the process with in the last year and a half. Whenever you want.
Right.
Yeah.
I did have, so you talked a lot about T-SPLOS 2018, right? So but do you put in a I guess request for funding every year, or is only every 5 years? Every 5 years. Okay.
Yeah, and this one is there's a bit of running around right now because the last T-SPLOS, the current one, is making too much money too fast, so we're scrambling because we don't want to have a gap between sales tax collections. Like, we don't want to tell businesses, okay, change your sales tax rate to 7% for a couple months, and I'll change it back to 8%. So we're having to get the next T-SPLOS projects together way early. So staff is not having a low-key summer at all. Thank you, Daniel and Steven, who's not here. And the Mayor and Commission, I think they're like trying to take a vacation and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I kind of wish we could take a little break. But we're busy. And we also have Barber Street to figure out again.
Yeah, see you next week on
I
that.
requested that we just wait on that.
Okay.
I had too many things.
Do you think that, well, I don't know. Let's, okay, so Daniel, how about this? Because we're running it low on time. So we're going to talk about the RAISE grant tomorrow. When we talk, can we hash out some actionables, deadlines, and order of operations for the Athens in Motion Commission with relationship to the T-SPLOS applications? Can we do that tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
And I can report back.
And I think what's been helpful for me with some of these is to kind of not only set up that kind of here's everything that we need for each thing, but to have some kind of ad hoc meetings, I guess is what they would be, where we could do like a weekly meeting until it's done. because honestly, I'd really like to get y'all's help for some of the ACC Gov proposals as well, just so that they're pretty well fleshed out and fully formed. So I guess I'm throwing out the idea that maybe we start having a weekly meeting until we feel pretty confident in our status on these. And we could and they could be work meetings where we just literally work on them. I'm not sure. I don't think those would need to be live, because as long as we are continuing to have these meetings and updating the progress from those, then I think we could be fine with that.
Yeah, I'm available for that, for sure.
I can help out too. Now, I am traveling for 4 days next week, but a lot of that I'll be sitting around in a hospital waiting room. So, you know, I can work from there. So,
Thank you, Teresa.
I'll be around the next 2 weeks, but gone for the next couple after that. So.
Thank you, Aaron.
What day of the week and time would be easiest for people to make?
Let's see. Pull up the work schedule.
Probably Tuesday or Wednesday for me.
Tuesday's better for me because I'll be traveling Wednesday.
Yeah, y'all remember we also have
Yeah.
Education Committee is meeting Tuesday, and we're having a special called meeting.
About Barber. Well, why don't we just add another meeting on 3 o'clock?
Yeah.
Maybe tearing up.
Athens in Motion is my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could we? I could probably do something.
I remember.
Go ahead.
Stephen Bailey had said something about the special called meeting. So, and I think, yeah, you were on here, Lauren. He said he had a meeting with Ronnie, and he realized that the vote on the Barber alternatives for segment 4 is a bit ambitious. So, the segment for alternatives being designed by Tool won't be ready to present until September. So the July Athens in Motion special called session on Barber probably won't need an hour and a half, maybe 30 to 45 minutes instead. So if you still want to cover Barber on that, what we could do is we could do 30 minutes at the beginning about Barber, and it could be one of these 3 options. One would be recommending Mayor and Commission to hold concept agenda until all 4 alternatives are ready to be seen in the winter, or recommend Mayor and Commission move forward on concept agenda with a CDO to move segments 1 through 3 into preliminary design, and then to further develop segment 4, which would be voted on separately in winter of 21. Or recommend supporting an upcoming Mayor and Commission CDO if any had been brought up by then. So basically what it's doing is, rather than saying, okay, we've looked at it and this is what we're going to suggest, it's, okay, you can either approve what's left and then we'll work on this and we'll have something for you in the winter, or you can say, put everything on hold, we'll talk about this again in the winter. So with that discussion at the special called session next Tuesday, we could do that for the first however much time we need. And then we could finish out with kind of talking about T-Splost or, you know, whatever else we want to do. Because it might be helpful to get the entire commission in on those discussions, because maybe, you know, if it's more than just us 6 putting together the grants or the proposals and stuff, we can get people doing pictures and data collection, because I will need some data collection at some point. So I'm working with with Emily on some of it, but I want to make some collection apps that y'all can go to and start collecting information. So, what is y'all's thought on that?
Yeah, let's plan on doing that, and at that time we can delegate. I think it was Stephen who had suggested we have like an Athens in Motion point person, project manager for each of our submissions. So maybe we can delegate, assign, people can volunteer for that at that time, and I'll have some kind of general language written up under the bucket funds that might be repurposable, because there's parts of the application that are a little bit difficult to understand, and it's been helpful for me to just look at this stuff. So we'll get organized next Tuesday. I'll include that in the agenda that I give to you, Daniel. Say Barber Street special called, also T-Splost planning. Does that sound good with everyone?
Sounds good.
Yeah. And then from there, we can talk about weekly meetings.
Perfect. And if anybody is interested in reading over the RAISE application, looking for all the feedback we can get, so let me know and I can forward it to you. And kind of need the comments back by tomorrow. So if you have time, that's great. If not, that's fine. I'm about to probably do that tonight and read through the rest of that grant. So
If you'll send it to me, I'll try and
It's
take a
been a-
look at it.
okay, great. Yeah, it's been a bad combination of vacations overlapping with each other, where everyone from the team hasn't been able to be in the same place at the same time. So
Right, because you're trying to take your leave, and it's been a year of COVID, and people are trying to have their vacation, so it's kind of a rough time.
yeah,
So appreciate
yeah.
you guys.
Let's see. All right. Well, I am sending this out now. I'll send it to you, Teresa. Anybody else want it?
To read it, I don't know if I'll have much feedback. I'd love to read it.
All right.
Just send it to all of us, Daniel.
Okay. I will actually. Yeah, I'll just do it to the whole listserv, and then add Taylor on there. And Elliot, are you on the listserv? I can't remember.
I'm not, but I'll be gone soon, so don't worry about throwing it on me. Sorry. I mean, it's nice to be friendly from afar, but
Yeah. I refilled the bike pamphlets that were at City Hall. So thanks for dropping those off. We were on the 4th edition with the ones that were in City Hall, and I think the ones that you dropped off were the 7th. So, so got them all updated. We just threw the other ones away. There was only like 5 or 6 though.
All right. Well, I know we're over time.
Any other?
Go ahead, Daniel.
Oh, I was just asking if anything else.
I think that's it. Thank you guys for staying on and having these conversations. It's a lot to figure out. Thanks, Taylor, for being here. You said you wanted to maybe talk with some of us, ask questions. You know, something we don't get to do enough in these meetings because we're always low on time is talk about transportation stuff, like really nerd out about it. So we're always happy to chat with really anyone who will go back and forth with us.
Yeah.
Send us your questions. You want to do a call? That's cool.
Yep. Happy to talk.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. All right.
Please, it was great seeing everybody.
Yes. All right, y'all. I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Have a good night.
See ya.
see y'all. Thank you.